Hey, what's going on? It's kind of dark again.
Yeah,
I turned the lights on.
Yeah, but you look where it is.
Where is it? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do it. I haven't been in here. What do you want me to do?
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
Better? This
Yeah,
one's too low.
you need some soft pink light, Tom.
Yeah, this was too low.
To make you look all soft and beautiful in the background. So what's going on? What's going on, everybody? It's Monday night. And time once again for a movie review. Now, how we stumbled across this movie was kind of interesting because Saturday night we didn't go out, so I was like, well, we'll think of something to watch for whatever. And we were going to watch Poltergeist, because remember we were talking about that the other day. And then I was like, well, we've already reviewed that, but I was like, well, fuck it, we might watch it anyway. But then I noticed that Amazon Prime, hi Pokey, had Cocaine Bear. So I was like, oh, maybe we should watch that, because a lot of people have mentioned it. So we watched that first, and that was actually pretty entertaining. And then we watched Poltergeist, and then we were kind of a little bit inebriated, and we kind of wanted to watch another movie because it was like a triple feature kind of deal. And we were scrolling through Amazon Prime, and we noticed this little movie right here. Yeah. I had actually never heard of this movie, but we were like, well, it's from 1974. It's like a sci-fi horror movie, and Donald Pleasence is in it.
And so was Tom.
Although Tom Baker.
Tom Baker, yeah.
That Tom Baker,
yeah,
like Doctor Who Tom Baker. So which we didn't even realize that until we started watching it and we saw it in the credits, because like his name came up. I was like, wait, the Tom Baker?
Yeah.
Holy shit, this is star-studded.
Yeah.
So we have to watch this.
Yeah, we didn't know it was a British movie.
Not at first.
Not until I saw Tom Baker, and the movie starts off with a bunch of like stock footage.
Now I actually found out that it wasn't stock footage. They actually, like I know, but they actually did make, because we made a lot of jokes about like Ed Wood being like, I can make it a whole entire movie just out of this stock footage.
It was showing like stop motion fucking plants.
Or like, what do they call that? Time lapse
photography of plants and mushrooms growing. And we're like, what the hell? This movie's gonna be fucking cheesy as shit. But we were just kind of goofing on it. But as the movie kept going, we liked it. We're like, this is a pretty good flick. It had good special effects, good story. It was homaging a bunch of other stuff. It homaged Freaks a lot.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, that movie.
Actually,
Freaks.
there was one scene in there that was pretty much a direct.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say rip-off. That seems a little uncharitable. But it was a direct homage of the whole "We accept you, one of us."
Yeah,
scene.
They don't know what you're talking about, probably.
Yeah, they do. Everybody, come on! Everybody knows. Everybody knows about Freaks.
It had a movie's got a bunch of good-looking British chicks in them. You get to see them all naked. Then most of them get killed.
The British knew what the audiences wanted. There's like all hot chicks, and you all get to see their boobies at some point.
Yeah, well, full nudity. And then fucking a lot of gruesome murders and monsters. And Donald Pleasence fucking tearing up the fucking scenery. Just
I feel like this was a slightly more subdued role for him. But he did kind of go chewing the scenery toward the end. Yeah. Was he supposed to be having a German accent at the beginning?
I think he was.
Because he was supposed to be like Dr. Mengele kind of thing.
I think he was supposed to be like a Nazi, an ex-Nazi.
Right. I kind of think that's what. And I think that was pretty common, like in British sci-fi horror of the era. Like all of the mad scientist characters always had to have German accents for that very reason.
And Tom Baker's in it. He plays a guy from a sideshow carnival. He's like some kind of hideously deformed guy. And he's working for the mad scientist. He's basically fucking, what's the guy's name? Fucking from Frankenstein. This is a Frankenstein story. What's that?
Kinda.
What was Dr. Frankenstein's sidekick?
Who, Igor?
Igor, yeah, it's kind of like Igor. But he's still Tom Baker, and he's wearing his fucking Doctor Who outfit pretty much. The only thing he's lacking is the scarf. He got the hat.
Yeah, it's like the same floppy hat and the
floppy
same coat.
hat, the fucking the big fucking velvet fucking trench coat, overcoat, and the side of his face is all fucked up. And the special effects are pretty good for the time.
It's very clearly like a zero budget movie. Like not a zero budget, But you know, a low budget movie. So
Not
like
a Doctor
right.
Who
So
episode.
some of the monsters look kind of cobbled together, but yeah, they still look kind of cool and like kind of creative.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, I would say they're a little bit better than a Doctor Who episode for the time, just a little bit, but because there were some shitty Doctor Who episodes, and then there were some real good ones, but from this era. But I'd put it on par with like Doctor Who.
Yeah, the thing about it is that, and I'm not super clear on, this movie came out in 1974, and I think that Tom Baker was either just about to start as Doctor Who, or had just started as Doctor Who, when this movie came out.
I think he started in 75. So
it might have been like slightly before.
Yeah.
Maybe he just got the part. So he hadn't. So I don't know if he'd actually like been Doctor Who yet, like where people would go to this movie and be like, "Oh, we're gonna go see Doctor Who," except he's a villain. Probably not. I think it was slightly after. And this was interesting fact. This was directed by a dude named Jack Cardiff. If you know anything about the British film industry, that name will be very familiar because he is actually considered one of Britain's finest cinematographers, and one was nominated for multiple Oscars. Actually, he worked on The Red Shoes, Death on the Nile, African Queen. He was the cinematographer on that. And then like in the 80s, he did Ghost Story, the Peter Straub movie. He did Conan the Destroyer.
Yeah.
He did Cat's Eye. He did Rambo 2. So, yeah. But he had directed like a handful of movies. Like I said, he's mostly known as a cinematographer. But I think this was the last movie that he directed. And I don't really think... This movie's also called The Freakmaker. Like, I don't know what title it's better known as nowadays. Like, on Amazon, it's called The Mutations. But I heard for a time it was actually better known as The Freakmaker. Which kind of makes more sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's more a lurid title, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what he was making. He was making animal-plant hybrids.
Planimals.
Planimals. I think I was calling them that in the movie.
We were, actually.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now, did he specify, Donald Pleasence's character, why he was like a genetic scientist, right?
Yeah.
And so he's got this thing where he's gonna, kind of fuse together plants and animals for some supposedly good purpose. Not really sure what that purpose was
trying to
exactly.
make a superior race.
A race of people.
Yeah, we were laughing about that shit.
A race of atomic supermen. Yeah, that you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Bride of the Monster.
Race of people.
A race of people. Well, I always say it like that because when they did Bride of the Monster on Mystery Science Theater, like when Bela Lugosi said that, it did kind of sound like Race of People when he said it like in his accent. Yeah. So it's like, so that was like a recurring joke that they would go, it's like, is he creating a race of people? Yeah. But so that's what we were saying about it. And then like atomic supermen and stuff like that. But yeah, so he wants to fuse plants and animals together just cause it would be a neat idea, I suppose, or to take over the world or whatever. I don't really know. But so he's doing that. He's feeding bunny rabbits to his big Audrey 2 plant, and so there's that. And then he has like Tom Baker plays this guy, Mr. Lynch, right? His name is Mr. Lynch, the character's name, and he runs a circus sideshow. And he's helping Donald Pleasence out because Donald Pleasence has promised him, obviously not sincerely as it turns out, but he's like, yeah, I'll fix your fucked up face if you procure me some, like, guinea pigs. And by guinea pigs, I mean, like, human beings that I can experiment on and, like, inject them with plant juice and make them turn into, like, walking Venus flytraps and whatnot.
Yeah, and of course you got to start with, like, one of the hottest girls in the movie.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta start with her. And it turns her into a damn salamander.
Yeah.
You just see the head, though.
Yeah, well, like I said, they didn't have, like, the budget to show, like, a lot of stuff. Although, like I said, some of the monsters were actually, like, pretty good. You can tell that they're just kind of cobbled together out of,
stuff.
Foam and spray paint. But it's like, I've seen a lot worse. So, I actually really did... We had a really good time with this movie. I didn't expect... I didn't expect it to, like... be well, I think the thing about it is that as cheesy as the premises are sometimes, like the British always kind of seem to take them very seriously, and I think that works to the movie's favor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
He eventually got the process right, and he took one dude and synthesized him with some plants and some plantimals, and turned him into basically a big humanoid Venus flytrap.
Yeah.
His chest would open up, and he'd fucking digest people.
Which was
It's
pretty cool,
good.
actually.
Yeah, it's pretty good. He could still talk, and what was funny is that everybody was chasing him away, you know, when and screaming when they saw him, but he was still him. He was still, you know.
Yeah, he's like,
still had his personality.
Don't turn the lights on because
Right.
I don't look quite the same as I used
Right.
to.
And then just on a side note, he ate a bum, like that was no big deal.
as one does.
Yeah, and then just continued on like he didn't do anything. And then
Venus Plant Man got to eat too. You know,
Yeah.
it's like if the bum was just there.
yeah, and he
it's
was
like,
still a good guy, kinda. Yeah, he was a good guy. He was a
Yeah.
good guy. He saved some people.
Well, I mean, I guess they were just saying that. Well, he couldn't help it, really. I mean, it
guess
wasn't
so.
his fault. He didn't turn himself into a
Yeah.
Venus flytrap person.
Yeah, no.
Like that was all Donald Pleasence.
He came out of the damn Thames and ate a bum. It's great.
with a Venus flytrap, he's like front of the bum's like shit.
Yeah.
That's probably, you know, when you're a hobo like that, that's
Yeah.
probably the last thing, the
Yeah.
last way you think you're gonna go is eaten by a Venus flytrap,
Yeah.
man. I mean, can you imagine? What a harm. And it would take a long time to die too, because Venus flytrap, like, it kind of just like puts all his digestive juices in there.
Yeah.
And then you're just kind of like stuck in there like digesting,
Yeah.
and you're still alive. Oh, that'd be
Tom
awful.
Baker as the deformed guy goes to a hooker. That was a good scene. He sees an ad. He was looking at all the strip clubs, and Jen said, "Man, the strip clubs look just like that in England. It's just like a damn storefront."
I don't know about now,
with
but last
pictures
time
of women in it.
Yeah, but last time I was there,
Paintings of women.
it
or
looked like
photographs.
that.
It's a weird way of doing it. And he sees a WAN ad. Somebody had tacked just a little 3x5 card on there. It said that offering dancing lessons, and what was it, rapid dancing or something? And I guess it was
Dancing
yeah,
lessons.
that's what it said. So he goes to the address, and yeah, sure enough, it was a hooker. She drops her clothes.
That's all. See, well, that's one of those euphemisms that
Yeah,
they
it's one of
used
the
back then.
euphemisms.
Yes, I would like some
Yeah.
dancing lessons.
Right.
Wink, wink.
Of course, his face is totally fucked up, and he tried to hide it. She goes, "Oh, I've seen everything. It doesn't matter." She takes it off. Okay,
I
no
like
big
that
deal.
she was just like totally
She didn't
not
give a shit.
phased. She's like,
Yeah.
whatever, I've seen
Yeah.
it all, bud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the kind of sad thing, and he's unquestionably a villain,
Mm-hmm.
but they do give him like a little bit of. They did try to make him slightly more sympathetic, because they made a big show of him like paying the prostitute extra to
Yeah.
tell him that she loved him,
Yeah, yeah.
because
Yeah.
he would never.
Well, they're trying to say that he was doing this, to get approval
Right.
and to be normal,
So
which is understandable.
yeah.
But he was killing people to get it done.
Yeah, which that's just not
Yeah.
the way to go about things. You're not going
And
to
it
win
was
any friends.
It was a mad dream anyway that scientists couldn't fix him.
Well, he had no intention of fixing
Yeah.
him. He was just trying to. I mean, that was just his muscle,
Yeah.
and he just like kept stringing him along and saying he was going to fix his face, like because he was just getting him to do shit for him.
Yeah.
That's all.
And in this one, Tom Baker can fight unexplicably. He never really seemed to be a real physical guy to me, but he was fucking kicking people's asses in this.
He looked big, and I mean,
He's tall.
well, Tom Baker was a pretty tall dude.
Yeah, he's tall. Yeah.
But I don't know if he was just like a little bit bulky, not fat, but he looked like bulkier. So I don't know if that was just like the outfit they had him in, or he just seemed bigger because of the makeup, or I don't
it's
really
'cause
know.
He's wearing that coat.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. But he
Yeah.
did seem like this big lumbering. Yeah, so what we didn't get into was all of this shit is going on over here with Donald Pleasence like turning people into plants and so forth. And then on the other side, Mr. Lynch, who is Tom Baker's character, he runs a circus sideshow, and whenever Donald Pleasence, when one of his experiments goes awry, he actually kind of is like, "Hey, here's a new exhibit for your circus sideshow," because he fucks up the one hot chick, like the first one that he takes in, and he's like, "Whoopsie, well, put that one on the fucking mistake pile," and then then they kind of put her in the circus as with the lizard woman or something like that, and they only show her a little bit, but much like I mean, this is very, 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 very obviously homaging Freaks from 1932, the Todd Browning movie. In also in the sense that they actually do use real sideshow performers in this. And I know that some people had a problem with that, just as they did in the 1930s, because they thought it was exploitative or whatever. But while I would argue that this movie, because it was the 70s, was probably slightly more exploitative than the 1932 one, but still, like, the sideshow performers in this are still all sympathetic characters, and they're kind of the ones getting fucked over. They're not the villains, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're actually portrayed quite sympathetically, so I didn't really have any problem with it. And actually, I recognized... there's famous pictures of this dude. He was called Popeye, and he was the dude that he could like pop his eyeballs out their sockets like really far.
Guy could pop his own
There's like gifs of him, and it's like he was quite a famous like sideshow performer.
He didn't have to do anything either. He could just open his eyes up.
It is almighty freaky looking.
Weird, yeah.
I'm gonna say.
Yeah, Ben said that Tom Baker never really was thin. I guess you're probably right. It's hard to tell what Tom Baker's build was.
He always had that coat on.
He always had that coat on, and he was wearing a lot of clothes. I remember him being tall. He's probably medium build. Might have been big around the waist, for all I know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I was like, it's not like I was like really looking at him all that closely.
Yeah.
You know, and especially in this movie because he just had the coat on most of the time, and he was like skulking around with that like elephant man looking face. But yeah, so Popeye was in this, and then they had a bearded lady, they had a couple of little people, and they didn't have like in Todd Browning's Freaks. Obviously, they had what they used to call pinheads. They had those, and they had like the human torso, and so they didn't have anything that out there. Like in this one, it was mostly just like a bearded lady and a couple of little people, and the dude that could pop his eyeballs out.
Yeah. And
who else? Oh, the alligator girl. She's kind of famous too. Like inside. Well, I mean, if you know anything about sideshow history, she's kind of famous. But she had like that skin condition that made her look all scaly and stuff.
Yeah.
She was in it too. Although I think she was only in one scene or something. Yeah. But it's weird because the only main character, like one of the little people, who's a guy who's like, he's sort of like partnering with Lynch, like, because he sort of like helps him run the sideshow, but then like he kind of turns on him in the end when he finds out like what's been going on, like where he's getting all of these new performers from, quote unquote, these new exhibits. And when he finds out, he's like, yeah, fuck that noise. But it's interesting because I feel like a lot of these, I saw a review that pointed out, they're like, well, the thing about Todd Browning's Freaks was that a lot of the actors that were in it were obviously real sideshow performers, but a lot of them were also immigrants. A lot of them were foreign, so they had like really thick accents and stuff. Whereas like in this one, they seemed like they were mostly British or American, and actually they were actually quite good actors, I thought. Yeah. Which you would think, because they're performers, they're sideshow performers. You would think that they would have to have some acting experience. Yeah. I know that like acting like live and doing shit in a movie is not the same.
Yeah, but
quite the same
their
thing.
Their roles
but,
were simple though.
Right, that's true. Yeah. But like I said, they definitely, there's one scene in there where they're having like, it was like a birthday party or something for one of the performers, and Lynch comes in and gets all pissy pants about something or other, and starts stomping all over the cake, even though they're being nice to him, and like, and he definitely homages Freaks because I think they even say like word for word, like, we accept you. I don't know if they don't go one of us, they don't do that, but I mean almost, and they almost wanted to do that, but then he gets all like I'm not one of you guys are freaks, and I'm just a normal guy with a fucked up looking face, you know what I mean? Like he had some issues about not wanting to be one of them, so there was that too. So there was like some other kind of stuff going on in there. Like it's cheesy for sure, but I don't know. I think we were expecting it because, like I said, by this time in the night, it was like kind of later. We'd already watched a couple of movies. We were kind of drunk, and I was like, "Oh, that looks kind of fun." And Tom's like, "Yeah, put that on." And so we were kind of, like I said, we were kind of goofing on it at the beginning, but then I was just kind of, well, that was like a lot better than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, it was a solid flick.
It was, yeah.
Solid
I had a
time.
good time with it, actually. Like I said, it's pretty cheesy, but...
Had you seen it back in the early 80s or late 70s, it would have been a solid flick. You know, something you'd see on fucking Cinemax or HBO in the middle of the night. You know.
It's weird because I don't think I had ever heard of it.
Yeah, never heard of it.
And I like a lot of British films from that era. So I'm surprised that I had actually never heard of it. And especially with Donald Pleasence in it and Tom Baker in it, you'd think that I would have heard of it before now.
There were a lot worse movies to come after this. I mean, you know, this wasn't, you know, a monument to suckage. It was good for what it was, you know.
Well,
within the limitations
one of the best things I think about me being a huge MST fan is that you are willing to give movies an incredible amount of leeway, because a lot of the movies that they show on MST3K are just
terrible,
awful.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you know how... But, I mean, they did some decent ones, too. I'm not going to lie. Like, I've seen some ones on there that I would totally watch. Like, not even on MST, because they were, like, really entertaining. But they've done some movies on there that were just the worst. And it's like, so whenever anybody, like, says to me, like, oh, that movie was so bad or something like that, I'm like, let me make you a list. You want to see some really, really, really bad movies? It's like, that's nothing. So, I'm kind of a lot more willing to give movies the benefit of the doubt, because... I've seen some of the worst movies ever, and they can get a million times worse than what you're imagining. And this one, actually, like I said, this was actually really entertaining. I had a really good time with this, and it's interesting that it's not better known. I guess maybe it has, like, a slight cult following, but I don't know. I had never heard of it. And like I said, I like a lot of movies from this era. Like, I like a lot of British movies from this era. I especially like all, like, kind of the Amicus, like, anthology movies, and stuff like that. And there was one that I don't know if this reminded me of it, but there's a movie that came out, I think it was 72 maybe, and it was called The Asphyx, and it was kind of like a sci-fi Frankenstein-ish kind of thing. Not so much people that were mutants, but people that but a guy that was trying to capture the thing that came and got your soul, like when you died, and he wanted to, like, capture that, and so you could live forever. And that was kind of one more obscure one that I had heard of, and then, like, I went to watch it, and I was like, that was also, like, pretty entertaining. I wrote a big long thing about it. But so I do like a lot of movies from this era, but I'm just surprised I'd never heard of this one, considering the the fame of the people involved. And this seems like it would have been right up my alley.
Yeah.
I just don't really hear anybody talking about it, and we just totally came across it at random, like it was in our, hey, we think you might like this list of, like, free movies, and I'm just like, hey, you were right about that.
Donald and Tom carry the movie.
Yeah, I mean...
That's why you watch this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. They do a good job.
Yeah, I thought so, too.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's got monsters, it's got famous people, it's got... sideshow performers, it's got tits and ass.
Yeah, it's got everything.
It's got pretty much everything.
Got cool British cars from there.
Yeah. Has kind of a decent score, too, I noticed.
Decent score. Had decent, like, 70s fucking fashion.
Yeah, very groovy.
Yeah, real groovy 70s fashion. The transfer of this film is really good. The color's good. So it's well preserved for a 70s movie. I liked it.
Yeah, I did as well.
You have a drink and you watch it and you just, like, enjoy it, and yeah, you rip on it a little bit, but it's entertainment. It's not, you're not watching Shakespeare.
Well, and the thing about it too is that I reflexively, like, make fun of movies just because that's what I'm like, and like I said, because I'm used to watching MST so much, and that doesn't mean that I don't like the movie. It usually means that I'm, like, having a good time with the movie. If I was just, like, sitting there, like, dozing off and not saying anything about the movie, that probably means I don't like it. Unless it's, like, some big deep thing that I'm trying to pay attention to. But if it's just, like, a movie like this, then I'm gonna make, like, snarky comments about it, because that's just how I roll. But but that doesn't mean I didn't like it, though. So yeah. Now, prior to watching this, like I said, we also watched Cocaine Bear, and then we rewatched Poltergeist.
Yeah.
What did we think of Cocaine Bear?
It was okay. it's just entertainment.
I thought it started a little slow.
I didn't take it that seriously.
But once the bear started attacking and tearing off everyone's limbs and shit like that, then it started getting because some of the gags in that were really, really funny, really over the top. Because I love that real over the top horror comedy type of stuff where it's just people like the one woman getting her fucking face scraped on the road and shit like that.
Strangely enough, though, I kind of like this one better.
That's what I was asking, because we actually watched Cocaine Bear first, and it was kind of early, and he was like, yeah, that was pretty good. I was like, yeah, that was pretty funny. And then I was like, okay, well, let's watch Poltergeist, because we've been talking about that. So we watched Poltergeist again, and we were talking about that. And then we weren't tired, so we watched another movie. And then later on, I was like, well, what movie do you want to review? Do you want to review Cocaine Bear, or do you want to review this one? And he's like, I think I want to do the Mutations. He's like, I found that one more interesting than Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, I thought Cocaine Bear was just kind of samey. It's a modern movie. It's well executed, but
it was funny. It had some really funny gags in it.
There's a lot of movies like that. This one I had never seen anything like this. It was weird, and it was, like I said, it was interesting.
And I think that's kind of why I like a lot of these 70s movies, because I don't know, there was just something about 70s movies that even though I was alive for most of the 70s. And I remember a lot of stuff from then, but there's still enough time has passed where you don't really have the exact same cultural context, but then you kind of do remember it.
Yeah.
So it's it's this weird nostalgia, but also what the fuck is this kind of thing? Because people were thinking some weird shit in the 70s, and everyone was on weird drugs in the 70s. Yeah. So they came up with some really, really strange ideas, where even if you were alive at the time, you're just where the fuck did they come up with that? What are they even talking about?
A few years later, this would have been morphed into shit like Reanimator. Movies like that, where they had gotten even more over the top, more zany. But this was kind of like a weird mixture of newfangled 80s stuff, but also 1950s fucking old school monster movie.
It did seem like a 50s sci-fi movie.
It's kind of like a mixture of that.
Like a mad scientist movie.
Right. They just updated it with color, hippie clothing, groovy clothing, and fucking titties. Which, okay, I'm fine. And fine with that. And fucking,
Tom's always fine with titties.
And then, but the idea of mixing plants and animals, that's fucking 1950s thinking. Yeah. That's...
So it's kind of like a weird combo between a 50s monster movie and the 30s and Freaks, which was from the 30s. So it's kind of like a mix between those things, but with a 70s little sprinkling of fondue on top. Yeah. It's kind of like that.
It was a weird mixture of stuff.
Well, that's what I found was really interesting about it, because it was kind of like a hybrid, but it was an interesting hybrid.
Yeah.
It's definitely
a 50s
an
80s movie.
No, not at all.
It was. It had not made that breakthrough yet. They hadn't made that leap yet into 80s horror, with Evil Dead and fucking Reanimator and From Beyond, and they hadn't quite gotten to that fucking 80s B-movie feel. But you could see that it was coming. I mean, this was almost there with Prophecy. Remember about the mutated bear?
Yeah, the mutated bear, yeah.
Yeah,
and the big ass tadpoles. And
it was almost kind of like that.
Big ass raccoons.
Right, it's happening in England though. There's a lot of university shots and fucking down, I guess, in the red light districts where the damn strip clubs are and the hookers, and then they're in the fucking.
I think that's Soho, actually.
Yeah, and then they're in the damn. The carnival. They called it an Italian carnival, didn't they?
Oh, they might have. Now I can't even remember what the... Yeah. Maybe that's how they justified it, because... But I mean, even by the 1970s, sideshows were very déclassé.
Yeah.
It wasn't really something that you saw anymore in the 70s. So maybe they were trying to, fob it off on another country so we could explain why there was still, a sideshow.
They had some badass 70s British cars. They still look like shit from the 60s, but... There was just something kind of classy about British cars, even though they weren't very big. They looked big until somebody stood next to one, and you're like, "Damn, that car is a lot littler than."
You have to fold yourself up to put it
in. Kind of small compared to but they were kind of classy. Flat glass, the back windows were made pieces of flat glass, kind of fucking split down the middle and kind of fucking tapered to give it a V shape because they didn't have any curved glass. It's weird, you know. Weird how they did stuff. I think it was. I don't think it was a Rolls. I don't know what kind of car that was. Remember the silver car that
Yeah.
the professor kept showing up in, and all the
That's right.
all the chicks would get in the car with him.
Like a clown car.
They call them birds in England, but you know
Yeah.
we call them chicks here. You know.
Birds, chicks.
Yeah, and he's like 50, and he's got this looking real hot chick in her late 20s, hanging off his arm, and then he's got his friend who's another student, and then his girlfriend, and shit, half of them get eaten. I think almost all of them do, don't they?
Well, see, now, I would submit, and here's where maybe Donald Pleasence is not the sharpest tool in the shed, is because he works at this university, right? Because they show him, like, giving a lecture to the class at the beginning about genetic engineering. And this movie, I'm going to say, foreshadowed Jurassic Park. He was kind of talking about that kind of, like, genetic engineering that was... So, this was kind of ahead of its time. Some of the science in it was wonky and didn't make any sense, but it definitely did, like, foreshadow that. So he works at this university, you're led to presume. He has a lab there, and he has a class that he's lecturing to about his genetic experiments. Well, not his genetic experiments, just genetics in general. So he's doing that, and then he gets the bright idea to start kidnapping students from his class, like, to experiment on, right? Because like, at least 2 of those girls were in his class, if not more. And that guy was in his class, too, I think. So it's like, maybe it would behoove you to just go and pick up random people who don't have any connection to you. I mean, you would think it was really suspicious, like, if several members of one class, like, suddenly disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and he's just like, I have no idea where they went. I don't know. Yeah, sure, I'm working on some genetic stuff, but I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're implying. But yeah, so he probably just should have gone. Why? I don't know why he didn't just go pick up bums or prostitutes or something like that. Like, nobody would wonder if they were missing.
Yeah.
Instead of taking, like, students and turning them into planimals.
Right. Yeah. People that would be missed.
Right. That's a rookie mistake.
People from your own.
That's a rookie mistake.
Class.
That's what I mean.
Well, they had to have a tight story.
I know. It's like, we can't introduce too many characters. Right. We don't have the budget. Yeah. So it's like, so everybody has to be in this, like, but I'm just saying, like, you know, if you're a genetic scientist who's trying to turn people into planimals, I mean, probably you should just go pick up people that don't have any relation to you.
Ed Wood would have loved this movie.
Oh, big time. This is kind of what Ed Wood would have made if he had more than $5.
Yeah, this is what Ed Wood wanted to make.
Yeah. And this is a perfectly respectable, it's cheesy, it's from the 70s, it was low budget and stuff like that, but it's a perfectly respectable movie. And, like, everybody involved, like, takes it seriously. Yeah. They're not just, like, phoning it in, or they're not just, like, farting around or anything.
Tom Baker acts his ass off in this movie.
He does, and
he's a good actor.
He actually makes a good... Yeah. Well, he played a villain before. He was in one of the Sinbad movies, right? He was in one of the Sinbad movies.
He played the fucking... The Sultan, not what was it? The Vizier?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
He was an evil sorcerer.
Was it Eye of the Tiger that he was in?
No,
or
Seventh Voyage.
Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, I think it was.
I can't remember which one it was. Yeah. It was one that we reviewed like last.
No, it was Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah. Well, Eye of the Tiger was the first one that I saw. I think I saw that one.
Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, I think, that had Tom Baker in it.
Yeah. So he played a villain.
He plays a badass fucking evil vizier.
He is good in that.
Yeah. It's fucking... I guess he's a Persian sorcerer or something.
Yeah.
He does a bunch of cool shit. Makes a homunculus. Remember that?
Had right. He did make a homunculus.
Yeah. And then was bad to it. Was mean to it. Remember? And then he had it do shit for him. It was like a spy.
That's pretty shitty. You make a homunculus.
Yeah.
And then you just like be a dick to it.
He was kind of a dick to it. Yeah. He had to keep it under control. But he was a dick though.
Well, yeah.
He was a bad guy.
He's like, well, I want to make something smaller than me, just so specifically so I can be mean to it, because I'm a jerk like that.
Tom Baker could play a good villain.
Yeah. So, like I said, in this one, even though they do try to like give him some quote unquote, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say sympathetic qualities, but they give him qualities that show that he's not like why he is the way he is, because of the way he looks and stuff. But he's still a douchebag though. Yeah. But he plays like a really good part in it. But. You know, so if you have Amazon Prime, this is actually on Amazon Prime, and I had never heard of it, but it's actually
free
like
watch, actually.
and it's included with Amazon Prime, so you don't gotta pay extra.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Poltergeist too, because
Okay.
we watched that one as well. Even though we've already kind of reviewed that one, but I hadn't seen it for
We could do a retrospective.
several years.
Yeah.
So when was the last time we watched it? It was probably like 4 years ago, something
I
like
forgot
that.
so many of the story elements that.
Yeah,
it's like
you had
seeing it again.
forgotten.
I forgot a lot about it.
Because you forgot the whole thing where it's like when they're moving out of the house, like before they move out, and you were like, oh my god, it's over already. I'm like, no, it's not. There's a whole.
Right.
He's like, what happened with all the
The dead bodies.
the dead bodies like popping out of the ground
Yeah.
and stuff? Is that in part 2? I was like, no, that's in this one.
Yeah.
I was like, see, they come to a place where it's like, oh, you think everything's solved and it's the end and everything, and then they're like, bow, and then they come back and get you.
Yeah, it was a good watch. I think we paid $3.99 to see it again.
Yeah, it's $3.99 everywhere. You can't get it.
Yeah,
for
it was worth it. I wouldn't mind actually owning that movie. I mean, I put it right up there with maybe like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There were a lot of similarities
Yeah.
with this one and Close Encounters. There's something about the tone. And I'll tell you what, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas to a certain extent, and that new wave of Hollywood directors in that era of the 70s, early 80s, really could capture American suburbia, the feel of American mainstream suburbia. I think no matter, even if you weren't an American, you could probably understand, you could probably get like a nostalgia, even for an era and a place that you didn't maybe experience yourself. But growing up in that era, I remembered it being kind of nostalgic in that era.
Yeah, I see. I know
You
what you
know what I'm
mean.
talking about?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it was kind of affirming to your American lifestyle. You're like, yeah, that's the way it is. You know, that's the way reality is. I can go back and watch it now and go and just like feel how much they nailed it. That's kind of how it felt back then. The cultural expectations were like that. Even though not everything adhered to that, but that was just like the median judged line. That was kind of like normalcy. That was like the normal line you were trying to be at. But these guys understood the American mind real well. Even Jaws was like that.
Yeah.
You could watch Jaws and still get that American feel.
Yeah, I think Steven Spielberg is probably one of the... And I know that Steven Spielberg technically didn't direct Poltergeist. He wrote it, but Tobe Hooper directed it. But he seemed to be, particularly throughout the 70s and 80s, the best director at just, like, capturing that wistful Americana. Suburbia,
Right.
more than anything, like
Yeah.
American suburbia.
It's almost kind of like mall culture, too. It was like, that's where you lived, but you shopped at a mall.
Yeah.
And it kind of had that feeling, too. It was weird. It was a strange era looking back on it.
I think what worked with Poltergeist, and the reason why it was such a big hit, was I think they really did nail that just kind of like suburban family dynamic.
Yeah.
And they seemed like the way they interacted with one another seemed very organic, and it seemed like something that a lot of people could relate to.
Yeah.
And like they weren't annoying or anything or any more than, you know, an average person.
There wasn't
would be.
anything outstanding about them. They were just totally average, really.
Right. And I think and he
Yeah.
did a good job at like having them so that they had character. They weren't just like bland
Yeah.
characters, but they were still universal enough that
Yeah.
people could see themselves.
They could have been
in it.
anybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody could have been in that position, or they're like people that you knew.
Yeah.
You know.
I also liked, and this was maybe kind of, I don't know if this had been, I'm sure it had been done previously, but one thing that struck me while we were rewatching it was that this was one of the first movies that I saw where like some haunting shit started to happen, and instead of people like freaking out and being scared, like, you know, the mom is just kind of like, cool, you know what I mean, and was like experimenting with it and like trying to figure it out. And you didn't really see that all that much. Usually when you saw like horror movies, you know, they go in the haunted house or your house is haunted or whatever, and like, you know, somebody sees a ghost or like all the cabinet doors are open or something like that, and everybody starts flipping out like, holy shit, it's haunted, and it's like, you know what I mean. But I like that he he didn't go that route, because I kind of feel like it's more realistic. Because like if something happened like that, where you turn around and like all your fucking chairs are stacked on the table, like it'd be scary, but you'd also be like,
no,
wow, like you'd like try to figure it out. You know what I mean? So I like that he kind of did that.
Well, that's what happened with us at Mammoth.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of more that closer to like how most people would act.
Something would scare you, you might run from it, but then you'd run right back to see it again, to see if it was still there, that kind of stuff. Trying to figure out what had happened.
And I love when like when the dad gets home and the mom's all excited and she's like trying to tell him about all the stuff she's been doing that day, and she tries to get Carol Ann to like sit in her place and slide, and the kid's like, because she's been doing this all day and she's like over it.
Yeah.
It's like so funny. So it's like all this amazing like paranormal stuff is just like old hat now, because she's been like putting up with it all day long. So I just think that's really funny.
It was a good flick. I think it holds up. The special effects, of course, you can see that a lot of stuff is kind of drawn. It's like it's animated by hand.
Yeah.
Like some of the smoke and the rays, you know what I mean? But it's okay, you know what I mean? You're kind of forgiving of such an old classic movie. That's an old movie now.
Yeah, 82.
And the practical effects still kind of hold up, the dead bodies. The one part where the guy pulls his face off in the mirror, hallucinates it. It doesn't quite look as good as I remembered it. The hands are kind of like at the wrong angle, and
I noticed that because it looked like the hands were kind of backwards.
Yeah, and the face doesn't really come apart that well. You know, it wouldn't fly today. But you know, it was okay. It was a good movie.
I told you, like, I saw this movie. I was 10 with the first time I saw it, and that scene of that dude pulling his face up like scared the fucking shit out of me.
Yeah. What was interesting was the interiors of that house. How new that house looked. And I remember when houses like that looked new. Now houses like that all look old and run down.
Well, yeah, because nobody makes them look.
Nobody
don't
makes
look
them
like that anymore.
Another thing that was kind of a throwback to another era. The daughter was 16 in high school, and the construction worker guys were fucking catcalling her. Yeah, mama. And that was like something that would happen in '82. It wouldn't happen today. They wouldn't even put that in a movie today.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah.
They wouldn't put that in a movie today, I don't think.
Probably not.
No.
Dudes still do that, though.
On a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah, of course they do.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, all right. I haven't seen it. Not recently.
They still absolutely do that.
I saw shit like that in the 70s and the 80s.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I've never stopped seeing that. Like, it just
Where are you
seems like
seeing
it.
that?
No, I'm just saying that it's like it happens all the time.
Where?
It happens all the time.
You haven't seen that?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Where'd you see that? Where's the last time you saw that?
I don't know where the last time
she's
was.
making it up.
No, I'm not making it up.
I haven't seen anybody catcalling a 16-year-old girl.
Okay, last time I saw it was when I worked at that print shop, and I used to, which was 2014, 2015, something like that. And I used to take walks, and sometimes you'd see like teenagers walking home from school, and yeah, dudes used to catcall them from cars and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, but how old were they? Were they in high school too?
Didn't look like it.
Okay.
Didn't look like it. It does happen, Tom. Just because it doesn't happen to you doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But yeah, so I don't know. Like, it's the weird thing about Poltergeist is that I've seen it so many times that I know it's gonna sound weird, but it's like I almost expected it to be like longer. I almost expected that I always thought there was like more to it, you know. But like when I'm watching it, I'm just kind of like, oh, we're at this part already. Like it seemed to go really fast.
Well, it's basic.
Yeah.
It's a basic movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's 1982, and it's just kind of like a blueprint for that kind of movie.
Yeah.
But it just, I think it kind of captured the time, though.
Yeah, it did, big time.
It was pretty accurate. But so did Close Encounters. Close Encounters kind of captured the late 70s. Kind of how it felt. Very early 80s. What year was that? Maybe 79?
What, Close Encounters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. Maybe 79.
I
Maybe
think
1980.
so. I can't remember.
It might have been 1980.
I can't remember.
Terry Garr.
Yeah.
Never heard. She was young.
We reviewed that too a couple of years ago, I think. We kind of went on a whole kick.
Yeah.
I like Poltergeist better than Close Encounters, but that's just because, like I said, I'm not super into like sci-fi or like more alien type movies. I like kind of more ghost type of movies. But the thing about Poltergeist too is that sometimes, even though I've seen it a bunch of times, like every time I see it, I always forget how fucking over the top it is. Like, man, some crazy shit happens in that house. I kind of feel like if you did that nowadays, like I kind of feel like people would be like, yeah, let's tone it down a little bit, because all kind of shit happens in there, like just crazy, like monsters appear in front of the door and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like if you did that now, people would be like, yeah, it's a little much. But I don't know, for some reason it works. Like in that movie it works. I think if you did it now, it would be too much.
What?
Like just just the over the topness of the manifestations, because it really does kind of like ramp up, you know what I mean? Like it starts out pretty subtle with like just a little shit with the TV and everything like that, but then it like ramps up to like the dude's ripping his own face off,
tried to eat the kid.
and the tree tries to eat the kid, and then it was like fucking there's like all those ghosts like walking down, and like stuff like that. So I kind of feel like if you did that now, well, maybe not. Maybe it depends on how it's like how you handle it. Because I've certainly seen some more recent horror movies that did kind of go over the top with the paranormal manifestations, and they got away with it. But you have to really... But then I've seen some that went over the top with it where it was just, like, way too much, and I just thought they should have dialed it back. Because I tend to think horror works better when it's subtle, but for some reason, I always really liked Poltergeist, and I think even though it's, like, way over the top. But I don't know, I kind of like it. And the second one is actually really good, too, with that creepy preacher guy.
Yeah. Even
though they kind of... a little bit, well, I don't know if they sort of retrofitted the story.
I didn't remember that being over the top for 82 though.
Yeah, I mean for 82, that was like.
I don't think I didn't see that one in the movie theaters. I saw that one on cable. It must have been a year or two after it came out in the theater, and I just saw it as like impressive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, big ass head. You know what I mean? Wow.
Yeah, big ass head.
Yeah. Okay, wow, he fell through the fucking door, you know, and he came out through the ceiling. It was just... Look at it today, it's pretty cheesy. In a way, you know?
Yeah.
But it didn't matter, it was something of its time.
Yeah, with all the red goop on the tennis balls and stuff like that.
Then they came out and had red goop on them, and they put them in the fucking... Put them in the tub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the Giallo.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we were watching it, and I asked Tom, I was like, so if I got sucked into another the death dimension, would you come in there on a rope and get me? Pull me out through the ceiling.
Yeah, see, if they were to do that today, they'd have whole CGI sequences of what was in the spirit world and everything.
Yeah.
So.
I'm kind of glad they didn't do that, though.
Yeah, right.
Because you could just, imagine it. Well, the thing about it is because if they showed it, then it would just be, a disappointment, because people would be like, well, that wasn't what I was expecting to be.
I don't know, there was just something of the time, the Ghostbusters was pretty fucking over the top, too.
Well, that was a comedy, so they could get away with it more.
But I think just that imagery was acceptable for that time.
Yeah, you could get away with a lot more stuff in the 80s than maybe nowadays. Because, like I said, I think... And maybe the reason they can't get away with it nowadays is because they already did it in the 80s. Right. And it worked in the 80s, but it's now if you try to do it, people would be like, meh.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like, the cultural context is not the same.
No.
But yeah, so...
It worked because you had never seen it before.
Right.
And it was
now everybody's seen it.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of and now if you did it now, people would be like, oh, you're just ripping off whatever.
Well, they would just think it was cheesy.
Or, would think it was cheesy and you were ripping off something else. But yeah, so Poltergeist 2 was good. Poltergeist 3 was awful, unfortunately, because that was, the last movie that Heather O'Rourke did before she died. And it's sad because she didn't look that good in that movie either. She looked kind of bloated. Because that was, not... And then she died before they even finished it because, she has a body double in some of them. And I didn't really like that they moved it to I know that they were trying to change the scenery up and everything like that, but they moved it to that high-rise apartment building with all the mirrors, which would have been a good idea, but I don't know. I just don't think it was executed very good. I do like the second one though, Even though, like I said, they did kind of like redo the backstory a little bit to shoehorn in all the thing with the cult and that creepy preacher and everything. But the preacher was so creepy that I'll allow it, you know? Yeah. So, are you ready to wrap it up?
Yep.
All right. So, the next show is on Wednesday night. And this should be a fun one because we are doing, at long last, we're doing another Mysteries of Rock and Roll. This is going to be volume 2. We did volume 1 way the fuck back on episode 69. And I looked it up the other day and I was like, because I didn't want to repeat anything. And I think on that one we did the Elvis Orion thing. We did like Dark Side of the Moon and the Wizard of Oz. We did like some other stuff. So on this one, probably we're going to do mostly like mysterious deaths and disappearances, or or ones where there's some controversy about like whether they committed suicide or were murdered or whatever. So we're gonna talk about that. So that should be fun because I've been wanting to do that show for a long time and it finally won the poll. So yay. But yeah, so hopefully you guys can come by on Wednesday night for that. So yeah, I guess that will do it for this show, which kind of was ostensibly about the Mutations, but we ended up doing kind of a triple feature anyway. So hopefully you guys will come by on Wednesday night when we stream again, and have a good rest of your night. Have a good day tomorrow. We'll see you Wednesday. Good night.